Hello everyone, my name is Dr. Rob Angel. I'm an Associate Professor in Marketing Research. This very short lecture is part of our Centre for Marketing Research Research Insights series. I'm going to take on the topic of why your pedestal merchandise display is paying off. Now, if you're a consumer or you work in retail, I'm pretty certain that you've seen and come across this approach to displaying products. You'll notice that retailers are using pedestals, often with a glass cube wrapped around those products, to display things from bags to shoes to jewellery to accessories and other products as well. We're even seeing it used more commonly in e-retail as well. So in the thumbnail of an e-retail website to display the products. But the thing with this type of approach is that setting up a pedestal takes up a lot of space and it's extremely expensive. And so the question is it a good use of resources? Does it work for retailers? Does it change the way that consumers perceive products? And if so, why? We set in this research this exact question, and we wanted to see whether or not this type of approach is something retailers should continue to do in the future. So the first port of call for this study, for this research, was Greece. So we headed to Greece with a black bag. My co-authors Paul Bottomley and Maria Lokisidou. And we found ourselves in a retail store for the day. We set up our bag in the normal way that the store was showing its merchandise, on a rack and on a pedestal in a glass cube. We took some photographs of this, and then we went and asked a large group of consumers what they thought about the bag. Now remember, between these two pictures, the bag doesn't change. It's always the same bag. But we wanted to see, in the absence of any further information, like price, whether people saw that bag as more luxurious and whether or not they were likely to buy it, therefore through their purchase intentions. Okay? Whether that was heightened. If the answer to the question was no, there was no difference, then that would really shed some desperately needed insight and light on whether or not this approach is really feasible or not. But I'm glad to say we found that it did. Of course, the pedestal, the bag on the pedestal, the bag in the cube, was seen as one more luxurious, and people were more likely to report a higher score for purchase intentions as well. So legitimised by that finding, we took ourselves to a second and a third study. This time we were a little bit more controlled in our approach. So we brought our bag with us, but this time we took a little bit more care over the pictures. They were extremely highly photoshopped, for instance, to make sure they were exactly the same. The height, the size, the colours, everything else was consistent between the two photos. And we showed a load of consumers one or other of these pictures. We also followed this up, by the way, with a change in product, men's shoes. And we asked exactly the same questions of our respondents. This time though, we added an extra condition. We took off the cube. Now, what we found, or what we wanted to find, was whether or not we got the same results as before, which we did. The product was always seen as more luxurious when it was on a pedestal or in a cube. So, again, legitimising the first study. But the question that we had here was, why is that the case? And we figured that there were probably 4 reasons that would explain this phenomenon. Okay? And we wanted to put those to the test. So we asked our consumers a series of questions, okay? And they all came out as being significant, okay, in one or other of the studies. The first was people found the product more luxurious and were more likely to purchase it because when it was displayed on the on the pedestal in the cube, it looked nicer to them. Okay, so it had aesthetic appeal. People felt that it just looked more attractive, and we tend to be drawn to products that appear more attractive. Now that's really important, by the way. We're not saying that the pedestal was more attractive. We're saying that the product itself had more aesthetic appeal, even though it was the same. The second explanation, the second thing that we found to be significant was people's perceptions of the service quality. Now this is extremely important, by the way. When confronted with no other information about the store other than it is a store that you would be buying this product in, when that was the case, people perceived that store to have more friendly, helpful employees and a higher level of service quality, simply because the cube and the pedestal was displayed. Now we can conjecture here that service quality is likely to be higher because when you have a product that's displayed in this way, it may be more likely that you're going to need a service personnel person to actually go and get you the product. You can't just take it from the display. I've got to go and get it from the back, or I've got to get it from another shelf. So it signals to people that this is the type of store where I'm going to get a heightened level of service quality. The third explanation, and this is quite cool and really, really important, particularly right now, is that when the product is displayed on a pedestal or in a cube, people have a different level of perception about the cleanliness of the product that they're going to get. The cube and the pedestal stop people believing that the product is likely to have been contaminated by other people. People feel that it's more likely to have been untouched by others. And that's something that we love, by the way. Just think about it in this sense. What type of product are you more likely to take? If you were going to buy a t-shirt or a jumper from a retailer, the one at the front that everybody else has picked up or touched, or do you go to the back of the rack where people are less likely to have picked it up? Yeah? Contamination is something that's really important. And this type of display tends to signal to people that contamination is slightly lower. So that's 3 reasons. The fourth reason is probably the most surprising, but also the most obvious. And I should say, it is also the one that had the strongest effect. So this was the most important of all of these explanations for driving people's perception of the luxury. So it's what made people think it was the most luxurious, and the purchase intentions towards the shoes and the bag. Okay? And that explanation is that it made, in their eyes, the product appear more like a work of art. We call this the museological approach, the museological effect. And we even coined this in our research, the extended art infusion effect. Now, it's a little bit complicated, but also very straightforward at the same time. This kind of display reminds us of museums and art galleries, perhaps that we visit regularly or that we went to when we were younger. We've seen this kind of approach used before. And when we've seen it before, we've tended to see it hosting and holding precious artifacts. And because we've seen this before, it reminds us, it triggers us to think about art. It triggers us to think about museums. And remember, those are some of the most luxurious things that we can find in museums and art galleries. So we call this the museological approach. The products appear to consumers as being more special, more like a work of art when they're displayed in this form, which makes sense. We also find that this approach works better for people who have a higher level of cultural capital, which also makes total sense. Because people who have higher cultural capital are more likely to have been exposed to this type of display in art galleries and museums, and therefore are more easily likely to make the connection to the world of art, the world of museums. So there you go. There's 4 reasons why products that are displayed in merchandise approaches that look like this, a pedestal with a cube, tend to pay off. So we find in our research that this is an exceptionally good way of displaying your products, particularly for products where luxury and luxury perceptions are important. If you want to read more about the paper and particularly learn more about the extended art infusion effect, please have a look at our research. Please reach out to me. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. Thank you very much for listening, and best wishes.